Hi students! Okay, in today's lesson we're going to look at how sugars are moved around in the plant, and we're also going to look at how mineral ions enter the root hair cells. Before we do that though, I've just got these 6 questions that I want you to have a go at. So what you need is just a piece of paper, and you're just going to need to pause the video, have a go at them, and then we'll go through the answers in a second. Okay, so hopefully you didn't find those answers too difficult, but let's go through them anyway. So question 1, what is the flow of water through a plant called? That's called transpiration. In which vessels does water flow? That's the xylem vessels. Give one other function of xylem vessels, or you could have 2 answers here. You could say that they support the plant, and you could also say that they carry mineral ions. Question 4, which cells cause the air spaces inside the leaf? That's going to be those spongy mesophyll cells. Question 5, what term describes trees that lose their leaves in winter? That's deciduous. And then question 6, if the humidity of the air around a plant is reduced, what happens to the rate of transpiration? So if it's less humid, that means there's less water or water vapour in the atmosphere, and so we're going to have a steeper concentration gradient from the air spaces inside the leaf to the air outside the leaf, and so we're going to lose water vapour more quickly. So the answer is it increases. Okay, so I want you to just cast your minds back now to when we talked about photosynthesis and think about that photosynthesis equation. So the raw materials, what we needed for photosynthesis to occur, and also what the products of photosynthesis were. So the raw materials were carbon dioxide and water. We needed to have chlorophyll, which absorbed the light energy, which was the other thing that was needed. And we created oxygen and glucose. Now we know that the oxygen is going to leave through the stomata out into the atmosphere, but you also have to understand what happens to that glucose, that sugar that has been made. So there are 2 things really that can happen to it. First of all, it can be used in respiration alongside that oxygen that we've created to provide energy to the cell. Remember that everything that is alive, every living organism, has to get energy, and it does that by undertaking respiration. The other thing that happens to the glucose is that it is converted into every other part of the plant, and so as the plant grows, it uses that glucose to grow and to become new leaves, new shoots, new flowers, new petals, vitamins, proteins, anything you can think of in the plant. It initially started out as that glucose. So what the plant does is it has to transport that glucose that's made in the leaves to the other parts of the plant. And it does that by first of all converting it into sucrose. Now sucrose is the sugar that is extracted from plants and that we put onto our cornflakes in the morning, for instance, or in a cup of tea. That is actually sucrose that you are eating. And the transport of that sucrose is referred to as translocation. Sucrose is actually moved in something called the phloem tissue. Now, just to remind yourselves here what a tissue is a group of similar cells that are working together. And so phloem is made up of 2 different types of cells which work together as the phloem tissue, and the 2 types of cells involved are sieve tube element cells and companion cells. Now if you look at the diagrams here, the one on the left is if we've cut through the stem, okay, sort of across the stem, and you can see there the sieve tube element cells. It looks like a sieve. It's basically kind of got lots and lots of holes dotted all over it, and next door to that with the nucleus is the companion cell. And if you want to look at the one on the right, that's if we've sliced down the stem, and again you can see that we've got this sieve tube element here, and alongside that we have the companion cell which has a nucleus. So those sieve tube elements are a bit like xylem in that they are long, thin cells, but they haven't been totally broken down like in the xylem vessels. What we've got is we've got these sieve plates, which are kind of just like the cell wall, basically, with lots of holes punctured in it, just at the end of each of the cells. And you can see that on the top diagram here. You can see where the dotted line is, that's where the cell wall was, but now the cell wall has got lots and lots of holes in it, so that we do have these cells connected to each other. These cells are still alive. They have cytoplasm, which isn't, xylem vessels are completely dead, didn't have any cytoplasm, but they don't have a nucleus, and that's why they have to have a companion cell, because the companion cell has to control them, because the companion cell is the cell that has the nucleus. What the companion cells also do is they actively pump the sucrose in or out of the sieve tube element cells. And because they're actively pumping it, whenever we use the word active in biology, it means that we're using energy. So companion cells will pump sucrose into those sieve tube elements, and then the sucrose will flow either up the stem or down the stem. It depends where that sucrose is needed. And again, that's different to the xylem vessels. We know that water can only go up in xylem vessels. Sucrose can go up and down inside sieve tube elements. Plants obviously have to take in mineral ions, and they take those in from the soil in through their root hair cells. Now, there are loads and loads of different mineral ions that plants need, just like you might need lots of different ones like calcium, sodium, potassium, iron, etc. And two big ones that plants need are nitrates, which they use to make amino acids and proteins, and magnesium, which is used to make chlorophyll. And they get those from the soil. And if you look at the picture here, we've got a root hair cell, and the little the dots, the purple coloured dots, they represent mineral ions. And what you can see here is that we've got a lot of mineral ions inside the root hair cell and not many in the soil, but the plant cell needs more. And so normally by diffusion, those mineral ions would move out of the cell from an area of high to low concentration, but we don't want that to happen. We need to get more into the cell. And so what the cell does is it actively pumps those mineral ions into the cytoplasm of the root hair cell. And that process is referred to as active transport. So the definition of that is the movement of particles from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration, and this process requires energy.